It's been 77 years since the borders were drawn. But honestly, the emotions around the 1947 partition of the Indian subcontinent run just as deep today as they did back then. It's one of those moments in history that completely redefined both the geography and the soul of South Asia. But when you look back at that long fight for independence, a pretty striking question comes up. How exactly did a remarkably united front of freedom fighters, people who literally stood shoulder to shoulder against the British Empire, end up bitterly tearing their own subcontinent apart?
It's a provocative question, right? Could the 1947 partition have actually been avoided? Well, in this explainer, we're going to look strictly at the historical dominoes that led to this massive tragedy. We're not here to point fingers or play the what-if game. Instead, we're going to unpack the strict chronological chain of cause and effect. We're talking about the policies, the shifting alliances, and that ultimate administrative collapse that basically forced a divided dawn upon two brand new nations.
To do this, we'll untangle the history across 6 stages. 1. The seeds of division. 2. Shifting alliances and demands. 3. The turning point. 4. The British exit strategy. 5. Chaos and direct action. And finally, 6. Drawing the final line.
Part 1. The Seeds of Division.
Okay, let's dive into this by establishing the baseline reality of pre-partition British India. At the turn of the 20th century, the total population stood at around 38 crore, so about 380 million people. Now look at this demographic split. 65% of the population was Hindu, 27% was Muslim, and 8% fell into other categories. While Hindus were the vast majority overall, Muslims held strong majorities in very specific geographical pockets, mostly the northwest and the east, like in Bengal. You can see how this specific demographic split created very real, genuine anxieties about majority versus minority representation. And, well, that underlying anxiety was a pressure point the British Empire would quickly learn to exploit.
In 1905, Viceroy Lord Curzon pushed the very first domino. Facing this fierce united resistance in the massive province of Bengal, Curzon executed a classic divide-and-rule tactic. He partitioned Bengal straight down religious lines, separating the Muslim majority east from the Hindu majority west. And think about how effective this was. The whole goal was to convert united nationalism into religious friction. Tragically, it worked. The Indian National Congress protested fiercely, but the division sparked deep insecurities. By 1906, over in Dhaka, the All India Muslim League was formed specifically to safeguard Muslim political rights, because there was a growing fear that an independent India would essentially just mean a Hindu-ruled India. Fast forward to 1909, and the British rewarded this division through the Morley Minto reforms, officially granting Muslims separate electorates.
Part 2. Shifting alliances and demands.
With the political landscape completely fractured by the colonial government, individual leaders and factions drastically changed their strategies. Which brings us to the really striking irony of Muhammad Ali Jinnah's ideological journey. It's fascinating, because early in his career, Jinnah was actually a member of the Indian National Congress. He fiercely criticized orthodox religious politics and was famously hailed as the ambassador of Hindu-Muslim unity. But as the political deadlock worsened, Jinnah felt alienated by the rising religious undertones in the broader movement. He got so frustrated he actually quit politics entirely and moved to London. When he returned to India years later to take the helm of the Muslim League, his stance had shifted completely. That former ambassador of unity had literally become the primary architect of the two-nation theory.
But what actually broke that unity on a structural level? It comes back to that concept of separate electorates. This was an electoral framework where, in certain constituencies, only Muslim candidates could stand for election and only Muslim citizens were permitted to vote for them. The Muslim League demanded this because they saw it as the only mathematical way to ensure a minority group could secure real legislative power against a massive majority. The British, of course, eagerly approved it. It's absolutely crucial to understand this when analyzing political polarization. Structurally cementing this system meant politicians were no longer incentivized to appeal to the whole public. They really only needed to appeal to their specific religious base.
Part 3. The turning point. Heading into the 1930s and 40s, we enter a period where these structural differences solidify into an unbreakable high-stakes deadlock. By this point, the two major political forces were operating in entirely different realities. The Indian National Congress maintained its stance as representing all Indians, Hindus, Muslims, everybody, and fiercely advocated for a united, secular India. On the flip side, the Muslim League had officially adopted the two-nation theory. Their stance was that Hindus and Muslims were fundamentally different nations that simply could not coexist under one single government. By 1940, the League formally demanded a separate state for Muslims. The line in the sand was officially drawn.
And this brilliantly illustrates just how divided the public had actually become. After World War II, the British held provincial elections in 1946 just to test the waters. The results were incredibly stark. The Indian National Congress easily swept the general Hindu-majority areas, but the Muslim League won a staggering 425 out of the 482 seats reserved for Muslims. I mean, that is an undeniable mandate. This data point definitively proved to the British and to the Congress that the Muslim League had successfully become the primary, unquestionable voice for the subcontinent's Muslim voters.
Part 4. The British Exit Strategy.
The timing of this absolute deadlock really couldn't have been worse for the colonizers. Following the devastation of World War II, a financially ruined and militarily exhausted UK desperately needed a way out of India. Realizing that handing over power to two fundamentally opposed parties was a recipe for disaster, the British made one final, highly complex attempt to avoid partition. They sent a cabinet mission in 1946 with a three-tier power-sharing proposal. It envisioned a united India, but with a drastically weakened central government that only controlled defense, foreign affairs, and communication. Below that, individual states would be bundled into three specific groups, Groups A, B, and C. Essentially, this clustered Hindu-majority states into one group and Muslim-majority states into the other two.
So the crucial point here is that this plan was completely unworkable for the people who actually had to govern. The INC rejected it because they wanted a strong central government to hold the massive country together, and they demanded that states shouldn't be forced into these religious groups. Now, Jinnah and the Muslim League initially accepted the plan, seeing those provincial groups as a sort of stepping stone to an eventual Pakistan. But they backed out entirely when Congress demanded modifications. So with that final diplomatic compromise dead in the water, total political deadlock resumed.
Part 5. Chaos and Direct Action.
With diplomacy failing, the situation in India took a dark and devastating turn. What had been a battle of administrative disagreements tragically spilled over into horrific, widespread street violence. In August 1946, frustrated by the deadlock, Jinnah called for Direct Action Day to force the demand for Pakistan. But what was meant to be a protest instantly devolved into mass violence, starting with the Great Kolkata killings and spreading literally like wildfire across the country. Daily slaughter became the norm. Panicked and completely losing control over the escalating bloodshed, the British announced in February 1947 that they would simply leave by June 1948, come what may. Fearing total civil war, the new viceroy, Lord Mountbatten, was sent in to rush the exit, and he eventually advanced the timeline all the way up to August 1947.
The sheer scale of the violence completely broke the resolve for a united India. The Indian National Congress, seeing the daily bloodshed and realizing the British were just going to drop the reins and run, finally conceded. J.B. Kripalani, the Congress president at the time, grimly noted, "Rather than have a battle, we should let them have their Pakistan." It was a deeply tragic resignation. Formally accepting the partition of their homeland had become the only conceivable way to stop the relentless slaughter in the streets.
Part 6. Drawing the final line.
We finally reached the last days. The political decision was made, but the physical reality of tearing a massive, deeply interconnected subcontinent in two had to be executed at lightning speed. And honestly, the details of this final step are almost absurd. The British appointed a man named Cyril Radcliffe to draw the actual borders. Radcliffe had never even visited India in his life, yet he was given just 3 weeks to slice through the incredibly complex demographics of Punjab and Bengal using just census reports and paper maps. Meanwhile, the administration frantically divided assets. We're talking military regiments, trains, even office chairs and typewriters were literally counted and split right down the middle. Finally, Pakistan declared independence on August 14th and India on August 15th.
But here is the most harrowing detail of all. Radcliffe's hastily drawn borders weren't actually announced to the public until August 17th. That's 2 full days after independence. People literally woke up as strangers in their own homes. The result was one of the largest and most violently chaotic mass migrations in human history. Between 15 to 20 lakh people, that is 1.5 to 2 million human beings, were slaughtered on trains and in the streets as they desperately tried to flee across lines drawn by a man who had never even seen their homes.
From Lord Curzon's first partition of Bengal in 1905, all the way to that catastrophic line drawn by Cyril Radcliffe in 1947, the dominoes fell in a perfect, tragic sequence. The colonial strategy of division, combined with intractable political demands and a desperate, rushed exit, sealed the fate of millions. Which leaves us with one final lingering thought to reflect on today when we look at how borders shape our modern identities.
Looking at the geopolitical reality of South Asia right now, can the scars of this hastily drawn border ever truly heal? Thanks for joining us for this explainer. Keep questioning the history around you.